Picture this. You're driving down a dusty back road in the Texas Hill Country. Cedar trees, limestone rock, maybe a few grazing cattle in the distance. Normal stuff. And then you glance to your right, and there's a herd of zebras staring back at you. No, you didn't take a wrong turn onto some African savanna. You're still in the United States. And believe it or not, this is not rare. Right now, thousands of zebras are living, breeding, and roaming across parts of America. Some behind fences, some without any fences at all. In today's video, we're diving into how a striped African horse relative ended up colonizing ranches from Texas to California to Maryland, why nobody's really stopping it, and what happens when these animals decide the fence isn't going to hold them anymore. Let's get into it. The origin story. To understand how zebras ended up in the U.S., we have to go back to the early to mid-20th century, when wealthy American landowners developed a taste for something a little more exotic than horses and cattle. It started small. Private collectors and eccentric millionaires wanted African and Asian wildlife on their land, partly for the novelty, partly as a status symbol. One of the most famous early examples is newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst, who in 1923 started stocking his massive San Simeon estate in California with exotic animals, zebras included, as part of his own private zoo. Almost a century later, the descendants of those very zebras are still roaming the hills around Hearst Castle, as many as 80 of them at a time. But the real explosion happened in Texas, starting around the 1960s and 70s. Ranchers realized something important. The climate, terrain, and grasslands of the Texas Hill Country are remarkably similar to the African savanna. Warm winters, dry brush, wide-open land. It was basically ready-made zebra habitat. So an entire industry sprang up around what's now called exotic game ranching. And here's the loophole that made it all possible. Because zebras aren't native wildlife, Texas doesn't regulate them the way it regulates deer or turkey. Legally, they're treated more or less like livestock. If you've got the land and a strong enough fence, you can walk into an exotic animal auction, buy a zebra, and take it home. No different than buying a cow. No special permit from wildlife authorities needed. That legal gray area, combined with perfect terrain, is why Texas now has more feral and semi-wild, non-native hoofstock than almost anywhere else on Earth. We're talking over 1 million exotic animals across more than 100 different species. And zebras are one of the most iconic. Why ranchers want them. So why zebras, specifically? Turns out there are two big industries driving this. The first is trophy hunting. Exotic game ranches across Texas, places with names like Ox Ranch, Cotton Mesa, and Texas Hunt Lodge, offer paying customers the chance to hunt zebra without ever leaving the country. For hunters who've always dreamed of an African safari, but don't want the cost or the travel, this is the next best thing. You can hunt zebra with a rifle, a bow, or even safari style off an ATV, right there in the hill country. Trophy fees for a single zebra can run anywhere from a few $1,000s up to nearly $9,000 for a premium specimen. The second industry is breeding and selling. Companies exist purely to raise, transport, and sell exotic hoofstock between ranches. A single female zebra can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, and rarer species like the endangered Grevy's zebra can go for even more. It's a genuinely massive business. The exotic wildlife industry in Texas alone is estimated to bring in around $2 billion a year. Some ranchers have leaned even further into it. In Missouri, for example, one breeder has raised zebras since the early 1970s, treating them almost exactly like horses, feeding them hay in winter, housing them in barns, even letting customers put a saddle on and ride them. Because here's a wild fact. Despite thousands of years of humans trying, zebras have never really been successfully domesticated the way horses have. They're notoriously unpredictable and, frankly, a little vicious when they want to be. That untamable streak is actually part of the appeal for hunters. It makes for what ranches advertise as a genuine, fair chase experience. When the fences fail, Here's the thing about keeping a powerful, athletic wild animal on a few hundred or a few thousand acres of land. Fences don't always win. Zebras are incredibly strong, fast, and, this is important, they don't respect boundaries the way domestic livestock generally do. As one Texas rancher put it bluntly, these zebras have no respect for fences. They tear fences down and go right through them. And when they get out, things can get chaotic fast. Take California in 2010. Several zebras escaped from that same Hearst Ranch property and wandered onto neighboring land. They ended up spooking horses and getting mixed in with a herd of cattle. The situation escalated to the point where local ranchers actually shot 3 of the escaped zebras, arguing the animals posed a danger to their own livestock. It made national news and sparked a real debate about who's responsible when an exotic animal breaks loose and causes damage on someone else's property. Then there's the case that probably went the most viral. Maryland, 2021. 3 zebras escaped from a private exotic animal breeding property in Upper Marlboro, just outside Washington, D.C. For months, literally months, these zebras roamed free through suburban Maryland. Residents spotted them in backyards, along highways, near subdivisions, and the sightings absolutely blew up on social media. People were setting up feeding stations and corrals trying to lure them back in. Tragically, one of the 3 zebras was later found dead, caught in an illegal snare trap. It took until early the following year for the remaining 2 to finally be recaptured. The property owner was later charged with multiple counts of animal cruelty and had a long history of citations for inadequate fencing. And it's not just Maryland or California. Texas has had its own share of zebra chases, including one particularly dramatic case where police in New Braunfels used a helicopter to track down an escaped zebra that had swum across a river before finally being tranquilized and airlifted to safety. And even after catching that one, officials had to warn the public that a second zebra was still loose in the area. So this isn't a one-time fluke. It's a pattern. Wherever zebras are kept in any real numbers in the U.S., escapes eventually happen. Are they actually invasive? Now here's an interesting wrinkle. Despite the dramatic framing you'll see in headlines, zebras invade America. Wildlife experts are actually divided on whether zebras count as a true invasive species in the ecological sense. Compare them to something like feral hogs, which are unquestionably destructive. Hogs root up soil, destroy crops, and outcompete native species aggressively. Zebras, by contrast, are primarily grazers. They eat grass, much like the cattle and deer they share pastureland with. Because of that, some researchers argue zebras, along with other African and Asian grazers now living wild on Texas ranches, might actually be filling an ecological role that vanished from North America at the end of the last ice age, when large native grazing animals went extinct. There's actually a growing body of research around this idea, sometimes nicknamed ecological replacement. The theory goes that these exotic grazers could be doing some of the same jobs ancient extinct megafauna once did, clearing old grass, dispersing seeds, opening up land for other species. It's a genuinely controversial idea in conservation science, but it's part of why zebras haven't been classified and targeted as an invasive species the way, say, Burmese pythons have been in Florida. That said, not classified as invasive doesn't mean risk-free. Escaped zebras still compete with native wildlife and livestock for food and water. They can carry diseases, and as we've seen, they can cause real property damage and safety concerns when they get loose near roads and neighborhoods. Where things stand today. So where does this leave us? Right now, there is no significant push to eliminate zebras from private American ranches. They remain legal, unregulated compared to native wildlife, and genuinely profitable for the ranching and hunting industries that keep them. Texas alone is estimated to be home to well over 1,000 zebras spread across dozens of properties, and that number has been fairly stable, sometimes growing, for decades. At the same time, the escape stories keep happening, almost like clockwork, because the fundamental problem hasn't changed. These are wild African animals, and no fence is truly zebra-proof forever. Every few years, somewhere in the country, a zebra makes a break for it, and for a few days or weeks, an entire town gets a very unexpected wildlife encounter. In a strange way, it's become part of the fabric of certain American landscapes. Drivers in the Texas Hill Country genuinely expect the possibility of seeing a zebra alongside their cattle. It stopped being shocking to a lot of locals. It's just Tuesday. So, are wild zebras invading America? Not exactly in the alarming sense the headlines suggest, but they are here to stay, quietly spreading across private ranch land, occasionally breaking loose, and reminding everyone that just because an animal is legal to own doesn't mean it's easy to contain. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of America's strangest wildlife stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this one. And let me know in the comments, would you want to see a wild zebra grazing near your hometown? I'll see you in the next video.